So, again, I go back to the question because I've gotten a vague answer on the question, but I still am, I'm hungry for a harder answer and a more definite answer. Is the Texas skunk ape a Bigfoot, or is it our own thing?
It's
And why am I asking you?
it's something we share with Florida.
Well, you're going to have to get real specific because Texas shares almost everything with Florida. In ways, I think Florida is like they just drank more of the Kool-Aid. Too much. I think Texas took
More of the Tide Pod.
Texas just took a nibble off the Tide Pod. Florida, Florida
It's like Alice in Wonderland. We got bigger and they got smaller.
they threw the whole thing back. It's like they mistook it for the red pill. They took the Tide Pod. It's like every other state, you took the red pill or the blue pill. If you're Florida, you take the Tide Pod. So that's the question. But why am I asking you? Why am I deferring to you? I do know.
Because I'm the only one here.
Well, I know you that, and I know you have some experience interacting with primates, and it's better than nothing.
Loosely, mildly. They were in cages, and I created enrichment treats and chopped vegetables.
You've talked
for
about this
different
before
diets.
on the podcast.
Yes.
So this is
so
breaking news.
It was just
some of our
volunteering.
listeners.
And it's a wonderful sanctuary, but they don't have a lot of help because it's hard to trust people. I think the entire time I was volunteering, I might have been the only volunteer just because it's I would just come in and chop vegetables and leave all the time. And in a place like that where you have they had a lot of primates. It's very exciting, and people would want to wander and look around.
A lot of primates. I think that's really promising because, as you mentioned before, we were talking about Bigfoot in the sense that they are varietals of probably something with a common origin. I don't know if this commands the amount of respect that I'm about to give it, but since we're already talking about it, let's take it completely seriously, and let's try to elevate the discussion to a very bird's-eye academic perspective, to the extent that we, as lay people, can get it to that point, just to make things interesting, just for grins. We know that there are other kinds of monkeys in the New World. We call them New World monkeys, but they're tailed. So we have that. And the Bigfoot would be an ape. It would essentially be a great ape like the humans, just a different branch of that family. And we know that Homo sapiens at one point came across the land bridge and into the Americas, and that was the origin of the indigenous peoples of the Americas. So we know that hominids have made that journey. So knowing that, why wouldn't other branches of the primate family have made the same journey beyond simply Homo sapiens? Like, we know there are Neanderthals in Europe, and there were a lot of them. So knowing that, why couldn't there be some other kind of primate that made it varying distances across Asia? For example, the Yeti was known to have been sighted in the Himalayas. So maybe there were fewer of them than there were Neanderthals. So there's almost a non-existent record for them. And if there is, that it's isolated in caves and deep in forest. And maybe some of them made the journey even further than the Himalayas. Maybe some of them even made it across the land bridge that connected Asia to Alaska. And maybe that is potentially an origin story for these the ridiculous theories.
I think, well, if we're taking it seriously, we shouldn't call it ridiculous, but I think that if you watch videos or if you have any experience with some of the larger primates like gorillas, orangutans, and chimpanzees, you really see that you can see how you could see that there could be something more intelligent somewhere out there. The question is, why would it hide?
In this model,
and how would it hide in this world?
It would be an offshoot of the primate family, in the same sense that Neanderthal is a different kind of ape.
Mm-hmm.
It's a different kind of primate.
So I don't think it's ridiculous that something like that could exist.
A Neanderthal is not a human, but it's something else, and we know that it could breed with humans. And we have chimps and we have gorillas, which are, I guess it's reasonable to say that they are, in a way, less complicated creatures than humans are. They don't have as well-developed brains. So potentially there could be something between a gorilla and a human, probably perhaps in this wild, crazy idea that I'm outlining that probably isn't new to people who move in this world. I'm sure other people in the Bigfoot community have articulated similar theories because it seems obvious to me.
I'm just amazed that you're carrying this Bigfoot discussion.
And by people in the Bigfoot community,
I'm going to let you talk. Kanye.
I mean people at bus stops, and I guess that would be like the hollowed halls of Bigfoot academia. I'm thinking bus stations and the blood bank. So people in those areas, I'm sure this is old hat to them. It's the whatever theory, and but I don't move in that world, so I've never heard of the whatever theory. So this is all just off the top of my head. Why wouldn't there be something between potentially something between a gorilla and a human,
or a chimpanzee and a human,
and perhaps even much smaller numbers? It didn't flourish even to the extent that the Neanderthals did. And like I said, some of them didn't make it further than the Himalayas, and there's your Yeti.
It's possible, I think, but it's people, again, the question is, why would we not know about them? How would they hide, and why would they hide?
That's a great question. And also, if this did happen, wouldn't there be very numerous skeletal remains? Wouldn't there be some record of them being there?
Well, are we even looking for that? I know a lot of people are.
Some people look for that, and some people find it.
How would you even find it if they were in extremely remote areas?
Some people bury it and then call Art Bell.
You're talking about the 2001 Art Bell interview on Coast to Coast.
I didn't realize you had an encyclopedic memory for every episode of Art Bell, so
Well, that's a really famous one. It was Robert and Bugs.
Jesus Christ, you have names. Well, let me, how about I tell you what I remember, and then you tell me what you remember about the story, and you can make corrections to my story. Since, like you said, I'm holding the speaking horn in the TP. And you're going to let it roll, baby roll. So this, I don't want to say redneck, but this redneck was in the woods of Texas, and his claim was that he came across actual Bigfoot. Like, he didn't say Texas Swamp Ape, he described them as being Bigfoot. And he was freaked out, so he kills one of them, and then after he's killed one of these poor creatures, he comes to the realization that, the other one was a female, and that was this thing's wife. So in his backwoods logic, he comes to the conclusion that this is so sad, I need to kill the female too, so she doesn't have to live a life of grief without her male Bigfoot counterpart. So he ices her, and then he proceeds to give them a very nice burial. I guess the best burial he can put together, with he marks their graves with like a pack of cigarettes and just whatever is in his truck. And beyond that, he makes the call to Art Bell. Obviously, he doesn't call the police. You call Art Bell when something like that has happened, and you give old Art, Uncle Art, the rundown, and that's how I remember it.
Well,
is that completely wrong?
No, I that's basically what happened. He and Robert, Bob, and Bugs, they were out with two friends, Bird Dog and Jim.
Okay, so there wasn't just one guy, because
no,
it lives in my memory as just being this dude.
No, it was 4 dudes, and they were out hunting, and they killed 2 Bigfoot. I don't remember all the details, but they ended up burying them. They thought, like the Patterson film.
So this huge passion.
They thought it was a woman because of the boobs.
This huge passion play of morality and moral choices did not actually happen.
It might have. I don't know.
Do you know where the story wears really thin for me? That not that they encountered these creatures, that they said were not only able to carry out their execution, but they were able to give them burials, and then call old Uncle Art. And you know how long it takes to get to Art when you call in, because there are a lot of different lines on the Art Bell show. There's the time travel line, there's the vampire line,
the wild card line,
and they give priority to, for example, the time traveler line before the Bigfoot line.
And
because
if they have special nights.
If someone has a message from the future, you need to get those people on the air stat. So they have priority over the Bigfoot people.
Well, they have to vet a lot of people too.
Okay, here's why this stresses out the probability of the story that they were able to do all of these things. We've had family pets die, and we know what it's like to dig a very small hole in the yard. These people are saying, okay, if this is like a shack-sized creature, and there were two of them, you dug two shack-sized holes and filled them in after executing these creatures, and then were able to call Art Bell and tell them about it, all in the space of a day.
I don't think they did it in the same day.
No, boy, it didn't. It didn't happen.
That's a good point. That would be a really big hole to dig. But it was 4 guys.
2 big holes.
And they were all hunters. So
unless they did like
I'd like to think they're somewhat physically fit.
A Serbian-style mass grave and just kick them in like Mozart at the end of Amadeus.
Or maybe they set them on
story.
Fire, supernatural style, just in case.
Jesus.
Just to be sure.
That's how we should have started this discussion. I should have just gone, no. Just get to how we kill it.
Okay, well, there's an interesting thing. Ever since the Patterson-Gimlin film
and was that
in 1967...
Were those swamp apes, or were they Bigfoot on vacation in Texas? Never mind.
Well, ever since that film...
No one would go on vacation in Texas, not even Bigfoot.
No.
You go to Las Vegas or Colorado or someplace nice.
A lot of people like the Riverwalk.
Represent Texas. We love you.
Anyway.
Biggest thing in the universe.
Ever since the Patterson film in 1967, I believe it's been illegal to hunt and kill Bigfoot in the state of Washington, Oregon, and Canada.
They actually passed legislation that names the Bigfoot.
Well, I think they had a lot of people, looking for big hairy men.
Did they just write in the small print, don't kill anything interesting?
I don't know, but I know that there is
So George Mirasan is safe.
I think it's up to a year in jail and a $1,000 fine for trying to hunt or kill a Bigfoot.
I think a lot of these guys would think that was worth it.
Well, in Texas, it's completely illegal to hunt and kill Bigfoot.
Well, I think you need a hunting license. I think
it's classified as a non-protected species.
I'm no Ted Nugent, so I can't drop big knowledge about hunting in Texas, but I think hunting altogether in Texas is very tightly regulated.
Mm-hmm. But Bigfoot is not a protected species, according to the, Fish and Wildlife. So if you want to kill Bigfoot, have at it.
So maybe very rich men are bringing them to Texas, like Jeffrey Jones brought.
This is interesting.
Jeffrey Jones brought John Leguizamo to the island in the past so that he could hunt him. Maybe rich men are doing this with Bigfoot.
Wait, rich men? We're talking about like the Bushes, like people who have like real money.
Okay, hold for edit.
Really, really rich men, like Texas oil men or something, are collecting Bigfoot.
It's possible, but...
Or breeding Bigfoot. What, at Area 51, they're breeding Bigfoot and bringing them to Texas for hunters to hunt.
Well, I think Bigfoot is safe from most of those guys because their imagination...
Who taxidermies Bigfoot?
Their imagination, I think, never gets beyond, I'm going to be flown to Africa and I'm going to shoot an elephant that's not going to be a moving target. It's going to be very easy, and then I'll have it brought back to my McMansion in Texas.
I wonder if it's just Bigfoot can't be easy to hunt. Is that sort of like a Jean-Claude Van Damme situation?
It's funny you mentioned Jean-Claude Van Damme, because you're right. That was like The Pest, another film where I think an elite, rich class of people hunted humans for sport. So we both... brought the same gift to the party. I brought John Leguizamo. You brought Jean-Claude Van Damme.
I think mine was better.
I'm very ashamed of my gift. Sorry, John.
Okay, but it's that's an interesting theory.
But skeletal remains, there isn't much of a record for these creatures. You have that outlandish theory that I offered about the simplistic offshoot of the hominid family that made its way across the land bridge and died out in America, but there'd be skeletons.
But the sightings are always in very remote areas. They occasionally come onto people's property, people who live far, far out. But it's a lot of the sightings happen with people who are hiking.
But we found thousands
in areas they shouldn't be in.
Dinosaur fossils in Texas, and dinosaurs lived much longer time ago than the Bigfoot, so why wouldn't they find a single Bigfoot fossil or record?
I don't know, but
these are good questions.
But maybe that...
That's a kitty. There he goes.
Maybe these creatures only dwell in areas that are just so difficult to reach that it's not possible to find those kinds of remains. I mean, we found using Google Earth pyramids in rainforests that we can access.
So it can't all be like James Cameron when he was like he was searching for Jesus's grave, and then at a certain point he's like, what am I standing in? It's like, oh my God, this is Jesus.
The bones of Jesus, yes.
That never happened. There was a show about searching for Jesus's tomb that James Cameron produced, but in our minds he was actually in it, and he discovered the skeletal remains of Jesus, but that never actually happened.
It could have happened off camera.
Anything could happen off camera. I just ask Linda Hamilton. Ask Catherine Bigelow. Jesus.
Well, talking about the Texas skunk ape, there are a lot of sightings. It's supposed to be very, very active in East Texas and also Oklahoma.
I think Texans feel about East Texas the way a lot of people outside of Texas feel about Texas. It's like the next step.
It's a different place, but...
And then beyond that is Oklahoma. It's like, God, don't even think about it.
But Honobia, Oklahoma has a Bigfoot festival because it's home of what they call the siege of Honobia, where Bigfoot converged on a family living in a remote area.
Do you know what you encounter at a Bigfoot festival? Not Bigfoot, but a lot of very, very colorful people. And you know the types.
I think it'd be fun. I'd like to go.
You know, it's always a certain kind of person that has these kinds of encounters. It's never like an obstetrician or something like that.
That's not true.
Always a certain... I know that you push back on this question before. I've made this point before, and you've pushed back on it before, so go ahead.
No, well, I read about sightings from all kinds of people, all walks of life, and again, it's usually people who are either living in a very remote area or people who are hiking in very remote areas.
You know what the counter argument is? That the people who are most willing to disclose these outlandish encounters are people who feel like they have nothing to lose. Mm-hmm. If you have a reputation and you have something to lose, maybe you just keep it to yourself.
Yes, that could be a part of it, but definitely. But I have seen all kinds of interviews with people who have seen Bigfoot or think they've seen Bigfoot or seen something.
What are you doing with your life? But as far as evidence, photographs, videos, I was thinking about that, and I was brought around to the name Shelley Duvall.
Again?
Shelley Duvall was an actress.
What are you doing with your life? We know what Shelley Duvall's doing with her life.
Have you seen Nashville? Anyway, Shelley Duvall was an actress who came onto the scene in the 70s. I don't think she was discovered by Robert Altman, but he sort of showed how you could use her. This is a really interesting looking person, and she's a good actress, and this is how you use her. And eventually Kubrick was like, okay, I'll use her. And he cast her in The Shining, which I think is her most famous role. But she was in other things. Like a few years later, she was in Roxanne. I think she was Daryl Hannah's like friend in Roxanne.
Mm-hmm.
So, but she, at one point, I don't want to say she lost her marbles, but she just started acting increasingly strange. And people on the internet these days will say, oh, it's because Kubrick berated her on the set of The Shining. But I'm not exactly buying that, because The Shining was released in 1980, and up until like the mid-90s, she was still acting fairly normal. So unless it's like one of those karate punches that just takes a long time to actually resonate, like you walk 10 steps and then you die, oh, Kubrick bullies you and you wait 15 years and then go crazy. Unless it's something like that, I don't think it is. I'm not buying. In Kubrick's defense, he might be a terrible asshole, but I don't think he could lead someone to insanity. I think she led herself there. But that's the backstory for Duvall. Flash forward to the current year, and apparently Duvall is alive and living somewhere in rural Texas, like our old friend the Swamp Ape. And like the Swamp Ape, there's not a whole lot of photographic or video evidences of Shelley Duvall, but that doesn't mean she doesn't exist. So her existence shows it's possible to live some kind of life in rural Texas and be undocumented. I mean, you'll hear reports about Duvall, like she'll just pop up, like, you know, at the post office. It's like, oh my God. Or she'll be at the laundromat. It's like in a rural Texas town. And
this is actually a really fair point.
This is almost...
There's so much that people take for granted.
Let's call it the Shelley Duvall principle. If she can... And when you take into account that these, let's say, dislocated mythical apes probably lead much more obfuscated existences than even she does, the likelihood that there would be photographic or video evidence of them is like compound a million times more unlikely. But yet there's no video or photos of Shelley Duvall, and I don't know how she's surviving. She must still be getting royalty checks from Popeye or The Shining.
People just don't know to pull their phone out.
Or maybe is she spending money, or is she like eating the checks like a llama? I guess in that case, she'd still technically be living off royalties if she was eating them.
Was she kidnapped and taken to Area 51 and they cloned her?
So you're
and now
saying
she's got a bunch of Shelley Duvall's working underground somewhere for the government?
You're saying these sightings of her in rural Texas are in fact doppelgangers, and
I think that's what
they are imperfect. They are imperfect copies, so she doesn't fully have her marbles. Area 51 has all her marbles.
Maybe.
Okay.
Who knows? Anything could happen.
So
life is stranger than we know.
It's a fair point. So Shelley Duvall, we know, is out there, and she's living. But
we don't have photo evidence.
We know she's living an undocumented life, and she's much more readily available to us than a Bigfoot would be. So if that can happen, maybe the other thing can happen. You see what I'm saying?
Yes. It's very similar. And then you add to it that people think these Bigfoot actually destroy security cameras and trail cams.
Shelley Duvall, I've heard, does the same thing.
Does she eat them?
Like a llama. She puts the royalty checks from Roxanne, which are probably worth more as food than being cash. It's probably just like for 5 cents. She puts them through a shredder and dumps tomato sauce on them and just eats them like spaghetti.
This is horrible. Oh my God.